you're going to be too late. Okay, hello, good evening, and welcome to Second House Watch, the little program we have here on Facebook. You're going to have to ignore that. Our StreamYard's going a little nutty. I don't know why it keeps doing that. I don't know that we can count this as technical issues, but we're apparently having technical issues. I can't delete it either. But yeah, so thanks for watching Second House Watch, the little program we have here where we go over the legislature and kind of do a little review. So yeah, we got Nathan coming on. Let me add him to the stream here. Hey, Nathan.
Hello.
We're just getting started. So tonight we have, I don't know why StreamYard is just randomly putting our comments and banners up. That is super weird. I've never had that happen. Anyway, so tonight we have on me. I'm Angie Phillips, the founder of the Nebraska Legislative Study Group. Joining me tonight is Cindy Maxwell Osdick, co-founder of the study group, also candidate for Legislative District 4. We have Brooklyn Rosado, another co-founder, joining us tonight. Brooklyn, you may be familiar with her because she does most of our candidate interviews. She just had one tonight with Sarah Slattery that went really well. And then we have Nathan Leach with Nonpartisan Nebraska joining us tonight. Thanks for being here, Nathan. He's going to help us understand some rules and procedures. And then we have Laura Fisher joining us tonight to talk about public schools. How are y'all doing tonight?
Excellent.
Great. And I'm really sorry. I don't know why Facebook is like, I guess they just are really adamant that we put our website up tonight. So, so thanks for being here tonight. I'm actually, I know, Laura, that you're not necessarily able to stay with us all evening. So I want to make sure that we get a chance to visit with you. So Cindy, I'll go ahead and let you, since you follow the public school stuff closely as well, take the lead, and we can have a discussion about all of the interesting events about surrounding our public school system this session.
Well, there's a lot, and I'm not an expert, and we're, of course, just really appreciative to have Laura join us. She follows it very diligently, and she has actually just moved from teaching in the public schools recently and into the private sector, so that gives her a little bit more opportunity to speak freely, I think is the right way to word it. Laura, I don't know if that's the right way to word it.
At least I can speak about it during school hours now.
Right. And then we know that the revenue bills are coming hard and fast, right? This is at the end of the session. It always seems to be quite the rush of appropriations bills. This is kind of extraordinary this year, though, due to being flush here in Nebraska with, it is just going in and out with the picture.
I know it's very distracting. I'm sorry. I'm trying to figure out how to get it to stop. I've never had this happen before.
But we actually have excess revenue. And so we have to spend down from the cash reserve. We have too much rainy day fund, which, so if we didn't do that, then it would impact some of the other kind of tax situations. So I know that that's part of the process. And then we also have ARPA funds. And there have been some things proposed with the ARPA funds that would hopefully help with schools, but I'm not sure really how much was going to be maybe available for teachers, or did that not make it into the bill?
I've actually not heard too much about that, but I do know that having extra revenue really throws a wrench in the anti-public school privatization overarching plan or agenda, because I always have to remind myself, because it gets complicated, and the strategy is to keep bringing bill after bill after bill in hopes that even the slightest bit of legislation gets in that kind of opens the doors for beginning to defund public schools. And that's the ultimate goal. I always have to remind myself before I get too far in the weeds that the ultimate goal is to find a way to start defunding public schools. And what they want, and this is what I witnessed in the years I lived and taught in Kansas, is the main goal is to starve the public schools for funding, to cause them to fail, and then they can swoop in with their privatization plans. One big there's a school in Wichita, Kansas, that the Koch network owns. It's a for-profit school called Wonder, and it's not what's the word I want, accredited, and it's for profit, and they are obviously very close to Nebraska, so they're chomping at the bit for our legislation to get changed. So a lot of the money comes from the Koch network that gets pumped into Nebraska for fighting, fighting against public schools, I guess. So I'm a little behind on the latest as far as the ARPA funds, but I do know when I hear there's extra funds, that's an opportunity to point out, okay, there's no reason to, because we don't even fund schools according to our own, the TIOSA formula. I think they say like 3 out of 17 of the past years, we've funded our schools according to our own formula. So therein lies the problem. If we are, or the opportunity maybe, to talk about this, like, we've got the money, let's fund our schools.
I mean, I think that's a good way to word it as far as the opportunity, because one thing that I wish the senators had taken the opportunity, and I don't know, we can cross our fingers, they might get to work on it here in the last few days of the session, but Senator Walz had brought a bill to try to address the funding issue for our public schools so that it would have helped with the whole property tax situation, because those two subjects are just linked. And it was tabled or put off. I don't know if you've
From
heard.
my understanding, one of the things that held it up was that a lot of the rural why is the word hard to say, schools, or the schools out west, were concerned about the option enrollment, because something that's beneficial to them is they can, like, 2 or 3 really little schools from little towns can, like, maybe this town has the best science program and maybe the best music program, is like they'll kind of work together, and they have that option enrollment where kids can go to even part of the day in this school over in this town, and which is a great way to make up for not having the population that the big schools have. And I think there was something that was that those schools were worried about, that they would maybe weren't included in the thought process behind it. That could be where they got some pushback from maybe superintendents in the smaller areas.
Okay. Well, and I mean, obviously it's a perennial issue. If we can't get it fixed this session, it will in some way, shape, or form come up next session. And I know that the Open Sky Policy Institute had put out some information about some of their views on what is coming. And, the whole situation right now where we stand with excess revenues is a temporary situation. Mm-hmm. Every prediction is that it is based on what has happened with the COVID, infusion of money. And, so if we do tax cuts, it's going to be even more difficult when we come back to the next session. So that, of course, is going to be hard for schools and teachers. And we just want all of our teachers and schools to have everything they need. Our kids should have everything they need so that they can flourish. Well, and I know when you said accreditation, and I know you just had a couple minutes tonight.
That's okay. I'm good.
There have been a couple questions that had come up in our study group about accreditation. And when the bills came up in committee about, was it CRT or some of these issues, and how it could affect AP accreditation.
Right. So the College Board, which sometimes has its own issues, but they came out strong and said any school district that restricts curriculum as far as teaching history. I don't know if the CRT was specifically meant, but if there were limits put on what teachers were able to teach, they would pull out from those schools, which that was a great thing for the College Board to do. They made a strong. However, what worries me is this is, again, knowing how the other side thinks on this. They want the public schools to be unappealing to the higher achieving kids. So to them, this is probably amazing but I don't know, like, how would they be able to provide it if they're planning on not teaching CRT or not teaching certain? I don't know. I'm just guessing that.
Okay, I hadn't thought of it that way. I guess I'm not. I just don't. My brain doesn't work that way.
Well,
It's so great, these AP courses, and
yeah.
even Angie's daughter was able to take advantage.
Yeah,
and
my
you get
son's
these
going to start
credits.
as a sophomore when he goes to college because
Mhm. Wow.
Yeah, my daughter graduates this May. I mean, she graduated a semester, so she's done with school, but she technically graduates this May, and for both her high school from North High, and then also between the AP classes and the classes that she took some extra, so she'll be graduating from Metro with her associates as well. So
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow, that is awesome. Well, I wanted to highlight that we appreciate your expertise, Laura.
Yes,
if there's
thank you,
any-
Laura.
You're welcome.
And just help us if there's a
Sadly,
call
it
to
comes
action.
Thank you. Thanks for all you do.
Yep, we'll get the word out if there's a call to action with any of the bills coming.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good night.
Good night.
Sure. Bye.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I can't figure out that bottom. I did figure out how to get it to stop shifting, so maybe it won't be quite as distracting. Apparently today StreamYard just kind of has a mind of its own. So it's decided to do that. Okay, so tonight, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was one of the major things that happened at the legislature this past week, was kind of the exchange during the debate on 773, which is the constitutional carry legislation brought forward by Senator Brewer. The legislation would make it to where folks do not have to take a required training or course in order to concealed carry a weapon. So they were debating that this week. It was being filibustered. Several of the senators were filibustering. Senator Moorfeld, Senator Kavanaugh, a lot of the Democrats mostly were filibustering it. And there was kind of this exchange between that started out by Senator Slama. I mean, just to be blunt, she just decided to get up and kind of take some personal attacks and talk smack about Senator Kavanaugh. Senator Kavanaugh called for a point of order. She hasn't responded to. They kind of gavel. There's this whole thing. So I think what I would like to do first, if everyone's okay with it, is I would like to just kind of play what Senator Slama says and then follow that up with let's start back at the beginning, which is on March 10th, where Senator Kavanaugh speaks to the prior red flag bill where there had been guns up in the balcony. So I'm just going to share my screen here and then we will play that piece real quick.
And I haven't seen this part. I just saw the instance of the rules violation. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, and we'll play that part too. I have just the cuts, so we're not playing the whole thing. But I felt like hearing what Senator Kavanaugh had to say to see what Senator Slama was talking about would be helpful. So okay. I think StreamYard is going to let me share it. So
Did we get to introduce Nathan yet, or after?
Oh, I just mentioned that we had Nathan in here with Nonpartisan Nebraska. I guess he's been on with us before, so I didn't. But we will.
I need no introduction. No.
we will definitely
no,
give
that
you an
guy.
opportunity to. Okay, here's let's see. Here's Senator Kavanaugh.
For those watching at home, I just want to make something very clear about how you're going to see me in this debate. I am going to be very restrained in what I say. I am not going to talk about the merits or the issues with this bill. I am going to just probably read the language that's in the bill. And that is because there are people up in the balcony here that are here advocating and in support of this bill, which is fine. But we have taken zero precautions to ensure that there are no deadly weapons up there. And when we had the red flag bill here and the Capitol had lots of people in it with guns, we closed the balcony because, as I was told, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. So I don't want to do this way. But I want the people at home to understand that my voice is being impacted by the decision to not close the balcony.
Okay, so that kind of shows that's the comment that Senator Kavanaugh made. Cindy, I know that you remember pretty clearly the red flag hearing and kind of what happens. Do you want to maybe share a little bit of that perspective with us? I just want to make sure people have a background as to what happened.
So there were bills a couple years ago that during the hearing, there was a call, I think, for people to show up in force from like opponents and proponents on two very different kinds of bills. And what happened during that hearing is that there ended up being many armed people at the Capitol. There were people carrying like big guns, and some of them had army helmets on, and it was alarming, and it was troubling because there were people who planned on testifying that felt concerned that they would be intimidated while they were coming to speak to the legislature about their views on the bills because of people standing or sitting behind them with weapons. And
Yeah,
it's just a real, this is such a tough topic, and I know that there are all sorts of, viewpoints, and I'm only talking about during committee hearings and floor debate. I think that it's important that people feel safe to speak their mind and share their views and participate, not only as the second house, but the senators should be free to, be vocal about what it is that they have concerns about. Or that day is something that most people won't forget. Anybody that was there, or anybody watching it, or anybody that had connection with it. And I know that it was traumatic. It sounds for Senator Kavanaugh in particular. And the balcony was open the other morning it was open. And, I think that there was just a lot of concern and the kind of questions about were there procedures or not, and who knew about the procedures, and how
right. And
safe
is it
people felt.
safe?
Mhm.
Yeah, because I remember I did not go to testify that day, but I remember seeing the images of the people with the guns in the state legislature, and I remember having that fear. I also remember being frustrated because a lot of folks that are going to testify do have some kind of trauma with guns or some type of experience. I remember wondering if, they were safely escorting some of the senators that are threatened. Senator Hunt receives a lot of death threats. So for there to be, a day where people just freely bring a bunch of guns, it was very concerning. I agree with you that there's some trauma behind it. Senator Brewer then kind of gets up after Senator Kavanaugh makes the statement. Senator Brewer then kind of gets up and says, basically, if you're scared, you shouldn't be here, or if you want to disagree. I mean, he kind of gaslights and turns things around on her. But then, the day goes out, they continue to filibuster. And then this brings us to kind of Senator Slama's attacks here. So let me.
And that's the next day.
Yep. And
yes,
Angie,
the following day.
In this video, can you hear the gaveling and the points of order?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's kind of why we got you here, Nathan, is so that you can talk to us a little bit, help us understand the procedure and policy around this. So let's.
Yep. I was just going to say to those watching, pay attention to the loud gabbling that's going on. That normally would be a signal for the proceeding to stop or pause when the gabbling's going on. And then when the yelling of point of order, that's where things are supposed to stop as well. That did not happen, and you'll see how that transpires, I guess.
Okay, great. I got to share my other screen here real quick. Sorry. All right, here we go.
And good morning again, colleagues. I rise on support of LB 723. I'm not going to take my full turn on the mic today because I'm not helping with the filibuster. But wow. Senator Michaela Kavanaugh's turn on the mic deserves a response. Some people, when I said that I was going to respond, told me to just let her stomp her feet and whine like a toddler, and eventually she'll just wear herself out and take a nap. But we're talking about Senator Brewer, and I am nothing if not a loyal friend. Respect is something that's earned in this body, and when Senator Michaela Kavanaugh gets and makes policies about someone who is a hero to this country, he has 2 Purple Hearts. And you know what they're for? He got shot 7 times in Afghanistan, got his first Purple Heart, spent months recovering, went back, and then got blown up in Afghanistan to get his second one. That man has sacrificed more for this country than anything Senator Michaela Kavanaugh could even begin to wrap her head around. Senator Kavanaugh's claims that Brewer said moms shouldn't be in the legislature is false. And can I get a gavel, please, Mr. Speaker? Senator Kavanaugh's claims that Brewer said moms shouldn't be in the legislature is false, and it follows this ridiculous pattern of harmful partisan lies pushed by Senator Kavanaugh on members of this body, trying to target cancel culture towards Republican leadership, whether she's spreading lies about Senator Brewer or rambling incoherently about impeaching Senator Hughes and Speaker Hilgers for not getting her way on the floor. It's funny for me to see Senator Michaela Kavanaugh pretend to be so insulted by Senator Brewer's words during a debate on gun rights when, during a debate on gun rights in 2020, she targeted a staff member, not one of her own, under that balcony when their boss was on the other side of the chamber. She went up.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop it there because that's a pretty one-sided leaned bit of misinformation there that I don't really care to share. But so Nathan, can you kind of walk us through that a little bit? So Slama gets up and she is, ranting on about Senator Michaela Kavanaugh, and then Kavanaugh calls for a point of order. Can you kind of walk us through what should have happened and what kind of went wrong there?
Yeah. So in terms of the big picture of what happened, it's really important to strip away even the it basically whenever a point of order is made, whenever it's made, that person who makes the point of order is supposed to be recognized. And so under the rules of the legislature as they currently are written, if any member in speaking or otherwise transgresses the rules of the legislature, the presiding officer shall, or any member may, call such member to order, on which they shall immediately sit down unless permitted on motion or another member of another member to explain, and the legislature shall, if appealed to, blah, 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 blah. But basically, what was supposed to happen in this scenario was Senator Slama was supposed to sit down, and then everyone would go up to the front of the room, and they would basically say, okay, this is what we're going to do in this given situation. What didn't happen was Senator Kavanaugh was not recognized as she should have been. Senator Slama continued doing what she was doing, and the chair, instead of recognizing Senator Slama, in fact, gavelled her out of order. It really isn't important in this situation to focus too much on what exactly Senator Slama said and what Senator Kavanaugh said and who was right and who was wrong. We've had about 40 years of Senator Ernie Chambers in the Nebraska legislature, and so it's really difficult in terms of the precedent for us to get too into what people are saying on the floor, because Senator Chambers, I need to go into the history, but basically Senator Chambers really outsmarted this rule. And so like in the past 20 years, in the past 20 years, I did not see a single instance of this rule being used on the floor. There's points of orders being used that are recognized when they should be, but we have this rule in the rule book that if you basically question the honesty or the dignity of another senator, that it's against the rules. But we don't have a history of enforcing that rule very well or often enough that we really know what to do when the rule is made. So what should have happened was Senator Kavanaugh should have been respected as an elected member of the legislature. She should have been recognized. They should have said, Senator Kavanaugh, what can we do? What are we supposed to do as a process? She should not have, absolutely should not have had to say point of order a total of 4 times and been gavelled out by the chair. That was probably one of the most upsetting things I've seen happen in the legislature in the last 3 years. So what I'm doing as a response is going through and researching the times that a point of order have been made over legislative history. And then I found 2 instances of a chair recognizing someone who interrupted. So we know that there's precedent for that. And through this process, I'm hoping to be able to give the legislature a pretty in-depth report on the history and the process and why we recognize people when they make points of order. But yeah, it was pretty hard to watch. And I'm hoping that, I mean, the senator who was presiding, Senator Williams, does not have a history of being someone who's overly partisan, quote unquote. I don't think that what he did was right. He should have recognized the senator. But it is also, and it's important to also realize that sometimes people make mistakes in terms of understanding this complicated procedure and process in the legislature. The next thing to do, though, is not to continue to allow it to happen, continue to allow Senator Slama to speak. I have not heard a public apology from the legislature or this. Maybe that apology has happened privately, but this happened. This pretty major rules transgression occurred, and it was like nobody cared. There was very, very powerful speeches that occurred afterwards from Senator Patty Pansing Brooks. Senator Lathrop said some powerful things. Senator Matt Hansen did what he could to intervene. But from leadership, I have yet to hear anything unless I've missed it from the floor since Friday. So.
Yeah, no, I haven't heard anything like that either. And I do want to play both Senator Patty Pansing Brooks and then followed up by Senator Lathrop, particularly because I think that Senator Lathrop brings in some points that's worth discussing about the structure of our unicameral. You would hope that this is done accidentally in the sense of, the people up front just didn't know how to handle the situation correctly. It's also challenging for folks like me that have been watching the legislature and just the amount of disrespect that is continuously displayed towards women in the unicameral and Kavanaugh particularly.
Yeah.
She seems to be targeted and bullied by so many of them, and the procedures seem to kind of fall to the wayside when it comes to targeting her in these things. From the very first, what was it? I think she had a bill that was, I think it was to honor like her uncle or something like that. And it was like some language change in marriage stuff. It was more inclusive. And they didn't get it to its final reading, or I can't remember exactly, but it's just kind of this consistent negative bullying of Senator Kavanaugh.
And that's why I have it. I mean, I don't have the evidence to assume that anything other than an honest mistake occurred. And so I hesitate trying to make accusations. I did not appreciate that the senator who made this mistake went to the floor and talked about people being victims on the floor on Monday, because you didn't recognize a elected state senator who represents 40,000 Nebraskans. She asked for a point of order 4 times, and now you're upset that she's acting like a victim. Like, that was very, very, I think, disrespectful to the institution. I have a lot of respect for Senator Williams and a lot of the things that he did, but I did not appreciate that statement. There was a request to put the House under call, which is, even in the most contentious days of Senator Ernie Chambers, he would ask them to put the House under call on the 5th motion to reconsider, when absolutely no one voted for the motion to reconsider, and he wants to put it under call, and they still voted for it. And there would be no one who voted against it. That's just what you do. And Senator Kavanaugh, I have never seen that not occur. So I don't want to name any name, or not. I have named some people, but I mean to say I don't want to accuse anyone of being directly anything other than the fact that those statements, from what I've seen as a member of the public and someone who's watched the legislature since I was still a teenager, I've been very disappointed with how Senator Kavanaugh has been perceived, and just from what's watching just from what has been occurring on the floor. So my rant is over. Sorry.
Yeah. And so I would love to show, kind of on that note of respect for the institution, I would like to go ahead and put on Senator Patty Pansing Brooks and what she said, as well as followed up by Senator Lathrop, because I think that they just summarize all of it really well, or offer us a real unique insight into the legislature, I think. So let me share that real quick. Oh, I'm already sharing that.
Stop it now.
Mr. Clerk, for a motion.
Mr. President, I have a priority motion. Senator Matt Hansen would move to adjourn the body until Monday, March 14 at 10 o'clock a.m.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Speaker.
Sorry, that was the wrong spot.
To those watching who might be curious, that motion was introduced for the purpose of trying to kind of stop things, so they could figure out what to do. And Senator Matt Hansen said this later, that a better motion and that.
Wow.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Remember, the whole thing this is about is not making it personal. And we know that there are people in here that have a hard time understanding and communicating with one another. We must stop it now. I don't understand why the people up front can allow this to go on and have an attack and have a point of order. Why wasn't that stopped? I don't understand that. If somebody were attacking Senator Hilgers like that, people would expect it to stop. That doesn't mean that I don't appreciate Senator Slama at times and what she's doing. I don't appreciate what just happened. Obviously, we need to have some momsplaining in here instead of the mansplaining that continues to go on in here. And as a mom, I would have sent everybody to their rooms until everybody can get back together and be kinder to one another. This is ridiculous. Where are the adults in this room? Where are the adults up in front? That should have been stopped. And I don't appreciate it. I don't think it was kind. I don't think it's the way we go forward. I think it's embarrassment to our state. And I think it's very interesting that I happen to be the next one up. We must be kinder. We're doing the people's business. If I have a different position because of the people in Lincoln and the letters I'm getting, that's my position. That doesn't mean I don't like Senator Brewer. And I've talked today about that we need to wrap him in love and give him our prayers. He's struggling. But we don't have to attack another person in order to support this precious hero in our body. Now, I'm moving forward. I hope people can figure out how to bring back one of the members of our body who's valuable. And you may not like some of the fiery things that she says. She's a valuable member of the body. She's been elected by nearly 40,000 Nebraskans, and you must deal with her. She is ours. Whether you like it or not, she is ours. Everyone in here is our colleague and our friend. I'm so disappointed. I'm not disappointed in Senator Brewer. I'm not disappointed in I'm disappointed in what happened up there. It seems like something could have been done. People would have stopped it if it were the speaker. So anyway, what I had been planning to say was.
All right. And then she kind of goes into stuff on the actual bill. So I'm going to just move it forward here a little bit to
Pansy
Senator
Brooks.
Lathrop.
Senator Lathrop, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I got in the queue, I don't know, 9:15, something like that. I did not expect, I had a point that I was going to make when I had an opportunity to speak, and then we've just seen this play out in front of us. I had an opportunity to visit with the Pages over the lunch hour the other day. I was invited to do that by the clerk's office. Talk about things that are coming up, talk about bills, they had questions about, was it different? When you were here before? What's changed? What is this like it was when you were here before? Because the conversation with the Pages was about how has it changed since you were here 8 years ago? And I talked about I came in 2007, and it was I was the first wave of new senators when term limits took effect. And when I got here, we had lost some people who had been here for 20 years. But still here were people who were, I call them the old timers. They weren't necessarily old, but they had been here a long time before I got here. And a bunch of us came in. There might have been 25 of us. Senator Aguilar was here when I showed up. So was Senator Pauls and Senator Flood. And you know what? When I got here, the folks that have been here for a time not only mentored me on the rules, how do you pass a motion, when do you file a motion, what's a priority, how do you have an opportunity to speak, how do you jump the line with a motion, those kind of things that we all pick up in our first 2 years. But they also mentored us on the culture. They mentored us on the culture. They told us what the unwritten rules of this institution are. And as strongly as Senator Brewer feels about this bill, I feel about this institution. what we've let this thing devolve into on our watch. On our watch. That is not acceptable. That is not acceptable. To personalize things. I've been lied to more in the last 4 years than I have in the entire practice of law, 42 years in the practice of law. The lion, it's become a tool. People tell you things that aren't true. You got to get stuff in writing from people. This culture changed. It changed with term limits. It reflects the national culture. But this is a precious thing that we are to steward. It isn't our seat. It isn't our legislature.
1 minute.
We are stewards. For the time that you are here, your first responsibility is to this place, to its culture, and it's gone to hell. The young people ask me, why aren't you running? I said, everything's decided before I get to the floor. This is choreographed. Somebody's got a vote card. Everybody knows what's going to happen on every bill. And then people stand up and say things that are personal attacks. You're not this if you're not for this. Really? You think I don't care about this country, about the Constitution, about this state, or this institution? You're wrong. And I go toe-to-toe with any one of you that think that that's not the case. You are a steward of this institution for the time you are here. It is your first priority, not the bills you care about, not even your constituents.
Time, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lathrop. Senator Breezy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues.
Wow.
Let me
Angie.
unmute. Yeah, wow.
I just, as someone who, when we started this study group a few years ago, and with our love of our state and wanting to help impact the laws so that they would better serve everyday Nebraskans, and then to have, our understanding grow over these last few years and to see how things have changed. And then, kind of witness what happened that day. I think Senator Lathrop, and you could tell he's emotional, that he was overcome with emotion when he was talking.
Speaking from the heart for sure.
It's very discouraging as far as seeing all the personality issues and the division and the partisanship. And as a registered nonpartisan, I mean, truly, it is heartbreaking to me to see that we're not able to get good legislation passed like it should. Things come to, such a impasse, and we need our legislators to work together and solve real problems. People's lives and their livelihoods are being affected right now. And it's just really disappointing to see that play out. And I'm really hoping that they can take time to regroup and hopefully come back better. I know I've missed the today. I didn't see, how it all went today because I was out doing some other things, but I'm hoping that there's been some movement and that people are rolling up their sleeves and trying to actually get to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I think, that was me when I was listening to it with hearing Senator Lathrop, I was just like, wow. I mean, what was it, last week or the week before, a couple weeks ago, I don't know, my weeks are blending together, but when Groney stepped down and then they had the whole discussion about the treatment of women in the legislature, and we kind of saw that was like a systemic flaw that they have. I mean, it's just kind of ingrained in their culture. And then to hear this week and see this happen, and we know it's political, but to really hear Senator Lathrop say, like, like I'm not even running again because this is all just, you know, set up. It's just, yeah, it definitely takes. But I was curious. I know Brooklyn, you had stated that you hadn't had the opportunity to see that. So I'm curious what your kind of thoughts and opinions are after freshly viewing it.
Yeah. Well, I really agreed with Senator Lathrop when he said that it's changed since term limits and it's changed with the national culture. And I was thinking that too when Salama was talking. I'm like, this is how, like, politics is cool now when you like attack people and you don't talk about real issues. You just talk about these, you know, hot button things that get people really emotional. And it's just really disappointing to see her using that tactic that we saw Trump use all the time, you know, and just try to undermine the institution, like they said. So yeah, super disappointing.
Yeah. And that's an interesting take because, yeah, I think when it comes to it impacts so many things. I was even thinking, like, I was connecting it with LB 777, which we've been pushing for, to where, you know, the legislature would record and be responsible for getting this information out. And it made it through committee, but with some hesitation, you know, and Senator Lathrop was one of them that had mentioned concern about, you know, if this would be used as an attack ad. Sorry, my plant light's on a timer and apparently we've shut off. So anyway, so, and I think, you know, that this is kind of part of that concern that he has, is like, because Slama and other senators do get up on the floor and try to make some kind of showcase out of the unicameral rather than, you know, working for the people. They're campaigning, essentially, is what they're doing. And so there's an understanding, you know, it deepened my understanding for Senator Lathrop's concern that, you know, these videos would be used politically to demonize, or kind of those gotcha moments. I would say that that's already occurring. I mean, if Cindy and I, with the help of our former organizer Joseph, could learn how to record these videos and live stream them, then like whoever Senator Lathrop is worried about is definitely already doing it. But at the same time, like, I guess what I'm saying is it all kind of comes around, because like those actions are now giving hesitation to a bill that would give us, the second house, more transparency and ability to participate. So this really just has like this whole root system of problems with our unicameral and the changes that we're seeing. And I know, Nathan, that's one of the things that I appreciate about Nonpartisan Nebraska is your focus on ensuring the institution is upheld. So
yeah, and I mean, what we're seeing are symptoms of a problem. I mean, the way that lawmakers behave within the institution itself is extremely hard to control. Like, we can't like pass a law that says you will all be friends and be nice to each other, as much as we would like to. And so I'm not a political scientist, but from my understanding of political science, those are the things that need to be looked at for us to diagnose the legislature. Are things like term limits, who's been a huge one. We know that the increased money in politics has been having somewhat of an impact. I mean, just exponential growth in the amount of money you're spending on a legislative election. I mean, that has to make you more partisan. And it has to make you go to the establishment party to get resources. And term limits makes that worse too, because more people are running for office. So the party has to be involved in recruiting more people. And then it's like this cycle. And then on top of that, you have the national climate that's becoming more partisan. I mean, it's been like, you know, fluctuating in partisanship for a while over the past 80 years, the life of the unicameral, 1937 until today. The unicameral has really functioned relatively fine, even with a senator as controversial as Senator Ernie Chambers and his amazing work in the legislature. Like, we survived all that and maintained what a lot of people would describe as a relatively nonpartisan process through up until about 2010. right when term limits, and so what do? We can insulate things through election reform and having statewide nonpartisan elections, or maybe we do redistricting and solve that, or expand term limits. All of those things should be on the table. We should be doing all of it. We should be doing everything we can to restore this institution. And
well, and it's interesting because there's been legislation that's even been presented to go the other way. Like Senator Slama has introduced legislation to make the so
I guess one of the hardest things for us as an organization is that we love this institution and we're going to fight for it 100%. But we also don't want it to be like, let's say 10 years. I mean, honestly, this could happen extremely soon, that we see a real gutting of some of these key nonpartisan provisions. And if we're not willing to say, okay, we need to figure out the best way for us to move forward. And process-wise, we need to be committed to things like the point of order. We need to be committed to rules. We need to be committed to finding a process that we can agree on that is fair, even if we have to adopt some partisan things. But let's do the most nonpartisan things we can do. Like, we need to be willing to have continued care and conversations about our institution as these things continue to continue to get more partisan or change or whatever they're going to do. So I'm terrified. I don't, but that's why it's important that we educate people about what it is and what's happening. I mean, most people don't pay attention to whether point of orders are being recognized on the floor of the legislature. And most people wouldn't realize that that's actually a really important thing. I mean, when I was in Arizona in the state Senate, like the minority party was a minority by like two members, but they still had like 0% of the say in the process, at least from what the public would see. And at one point they transgressed the rules. And so the minority leader, who was a Democrat, called the chair, the president of the Senate, out of order. And then the president of the Senate called them out of order. And they were just calling, but there was they had a minority of 2 members. And in Nebraska, if 2 members, you can convince those 2 members to go your way. I mean, people are willing to do that. But there, it's like what you have next to your name in your party, that's what you do. It's the same in the US.
And that's definitely not what we want to happen. And I think it is important. And Nathan, you actually kind of helped me, and I think a lot of us, really realize and understand the importance of the rules when it comes to this. I know when we started with the legislature, we were, when we started the study group, we were much more focused on the rules in the sense of how it impacts, like how does a bill get made into law? How does it pass through committee? How, what is a pull motion? Things like that. But you really brought the importance of the actual rulemaking and the procedures to us. And I think it was the beginning of last session, maybe, when you kind of helped us understand that they voted on the rules, ahead of time. And I think it was Senator Vargas had a rule proposal about what was it? The diversity.
The racial impact
statement. Racial impact statement on each piece of legislation. And I know that we were able to get, I want to say it was like 27 people. We put out calls to action. We did, and obviously we can't take all the credit for it, but this is something that usually doesn't get much notice. But when you informed us about it, we put out a call to action. It got talked about, and there was like 27 people that wrote in, when generally they get about 0. So
yeah, but let's take one quick pause and let me tell you something about notice when it comes to rules amendments. Under the Nebraska legislative rules, every bill and every resolution, every gubernatorial appointment needs 5 days notice. Rules amendments do not need notice. And so last year, even with what notice we had, I had for this point of order business, I've gone through I'm over 20 years of legislative history in a day to try and get a report Monday morning. I didn't get the full report, but I was able to send something that was based on what I was able to glean. But really with rules amendments, we should be able to go through and look at the history and look at the why the rule's there and how much it's being used. Like, we need to actually look into it, and we need to let the people know what's going on. Like, they need to be able to travel, to make plans, to write their senator, to think about these amendments. But like in January of last year, when they voted on it, we had less than 24 hours to look at these amendments. Yeah. Because there's nothing in the rule. And in fact, there was a rules amendment that Senator McAllister introduced on our behalf that would have changed the rules to require a 5 days rules notice. And unfortunately, the clerk's office, I believe, felt that would tie the process in the early phases. I disagree with the clerk, and I'm going to be hopefully persuading him to rethink things, because, like, again, with the point of order that we saw, like, with the clerk has like been there. He's the longest serving clerk in the country. The 2010 edition of Mason's Manual was dedicated to the man. I mean, he knows his stuff when it comes to parliamentary procedure and rules in that institution, and he's going to retire soon. And so how are we supposed to educate lawmakers about what their rules amendment is going to do, or what all of this is? I mean, especially with term limits, if we don't at least have 5 days notice. And so I've reached out to, I mean, I don't know. I'm hoping I can find a senator. At this point in the middle of the legislative session, it's still possible to amend the rules. It's just a little harder. You'd have to introduce the rules amendment. You can introduce it at any point. It immediately gets referred to the Rules Committee. They have a hearing, and they can report on it or not report on it. But I think if I can get enough people to realize the importance of us, like, taking our rules more seriously than, oh, you know, that does sound like a good idea if we handle the motion to do, like, let's figure out the history here and what it's doing. And sorry, that's a tangent on notice, but that notice is important, and hopefully we can make some headway or get reassurance from whoever the committee chair is likely to be next session that will have that notice. Because if this is going to be contentious and they want to just jam it through, I mean, 1 day's notice, try and be as sneaky about it as possible. That would be quite disappointing in terms of the ability of the second house to engage. So
yeah, definitely, and we appreciate your work on that, and please continue to let us know how we can help, because we definitely want
any more triggers, or I'll go
on that engagement. Well, I'm going to, because we are rounding up upon 9 o'clock, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. But there is one more thing that I wanted to chit chat about real quick. And I was going to bring it up, but also Marianne has brought it up in the comments, and that is the pull motions.
Oh.
The amount of, so let's see, Marianne says, would love to hear Nathan's take on the recent overuse of the pull motion to circumvent the committee process. So I know that we saw a lot of this, or, you know, we've seen this used this time around with Senator Brewer 773, and then somebody was talking about using it to get one of the is it Geist that has the bad abortion bill that she was talking about? It would be the one where if Roe v. Wade got dropped, it would automatically become illegal. It's called a trigger law, so it would automatically become illegal to have abortion in Nebraska. And so I can't remember. I think it's Geist that has that one. And she was saying that she's talking about using a pull motion during the special session during COVID. I remember, Cindy and I were very freaked out about, we need to address COVID and the things that are happening to people, but they spent, time on pull motions and, thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is what I would like to do to answer your question properly.
Oh, Albrecht. Thanks, Marianne.
Yeah,
sorry.
I would like to go and look through the actual legislative journal and figure out the frequency of the pull motion. It's my understanding from everything I've heard since watching the legislature in my lifetime that the pull motion comes up every so often, and every time the side that wants to use it is trying to use it because they have the votes, and then the side that doesn't want them to use it is like, very, very adamant that degrades our committee process. And that argument has been made, again and again for every single time. So the legislature seems to have a conversation with itself every session about the role of the committees, which have unfortunately become less significant with the increase of term limits. However, here's the bottom line about the poll motion. It is a tool. It can be the tool of the minority. And so, I mean, if they have 25 people in the body who want to discuss a piece of legislation, that's half of that's representing half Nebraskans. Do it rarely. I don't think it should be overused. I think we should respect the committee process, but I would hate to undermine or really question the integrity of that piece within the actual legislative process without doing more research on it. So, but it is fun to watch. I mean, interesting to watch because it elicits that conversation about the role of committees generally, usually.
Yeah, for sure. And sorry, Cindy, we probably should have said this ahead of time. So just for those watching that may not know, a poll motion is when a bill is struggling to make it out of committee. So if the senator that introduced that bill, does it have to be the introducing senator to make the poll motion?
No,
I
don't think so.
Maybe we need to double check.
So that might be one of those things where it didn't technically have to be, and then one time someone else tried it and then they ruled that it was out of order for the person who's not it was. So it might be precedent that it's supposed to be or something. I remember that being a debate at some point in history. So but I don't know for sure.
Okay.
There was another one this year that was
they would have
motion. The Convention of States.
Oh, right. Yeah. So we've already seen it twice. Yeah. And we might see it a third time if Marianne corrected me. It wasn't Geist. It's Albrecht that has that legislation I was talking about. Thank you, Marianne. But yeah, so the poll motion, so they have to have 25 votes in order to pull it to the floor, right? But then they would still, because generally, help me if I'm explaining this wrong or thinking wrong here, but generally if it's a poll motion to get it out of committee, it's going to be some kind of, discussion or whatever, because then they then have to have 33 to pass it, right? Or is that only if it's filibuster?
Yeah, but I wouldn't necessarily always assume most of these cases, you're pulling something controversial that the committee, because of its ideological structure or relationships within the committee, or for whatever reason, it's not getting out. There are cases though where this can be a tool that's used for other reasons, like if you're getting really close to the end of the session and then all of a sudden you realize you want that bill out of committee and you don't want to go through like that might not be a good example, but there are actual genuine good reasons for it. Most of the time though, you get it out of committee, it goes on the calendar just like every other bill, and if it's filibustered, it's filibustered.
So what if you do a poll motion, and if they do a poll motion and they get it onto the agenda, does the speaker then get to determine where it's at on the agenda like normal, or is there like some kind of rule about that? Do you know?
I'm not going to say for sure, but my intuition thinks that he probably still has control over where that bill goes. When you pull it from committee, it doesn't go directly onto the agenda. There is a motion to amend the speaker's agenda, but that's a separate motion.
Because Senator Brewer's 773 was pulled on a Tuesday and then it was placed on the agenda on a Thursday. So yeah, he has that control.
And he knew, and I mean, Senator Brewer was well aware of when that was going to be placed on the agenda before it was even placed on the agenda. So, or at least made public to us, I guess. But okay, well,
I'd really like to know if the senators, do they usually know what's coming up on the agenda? Because the speaker talked about how Senator McDonald had people coming to view a bill yesterday, that they were there specifically for that bill. There was some advance notice. I guess I'm wondering if that happens often, or if it's usually just a surprise to the senators too. I have to think they'd give the senators some notice so that they could get prepared for their bills.
I bet they have like a draft schedule that's like the kind of a preliminary, and then as they get closer and closer, they finalize more and more to give people some idea maybe.
I wish I could see that. I would definitely
just go ask for it.
They don't make it public, I don't think. I've asked.
I know, but you could be like,
I've asked.
Cindy's like, oh, I have asked.
I've asked maybe the wrong people.
Yeah, so okay, yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much, Nathan, for joining us. It was great to have Laura Fisher on to talk to us about the school legislation as well. I just wanted to kind of have a final thought as we close up here, and that is, I really hope that our membership and our viewers understand the importance and the significance of what was said today as far as the integrity and the structure of our unicameral system. It is our unicameral system and our unique structure, including the nonpartisanship of it, that allows Nebraska to pass more legislation that actually helps people. It allows our everybody in the system to be able to work together, put those party politics aside. If we start running like we do national politics, I mean, we're all going to be screwed. It already right now, it leans to some of that. You know, we have a lot of people that are struggling to feed themselves, a lot of people that are struggling to pay rent, that are struggling, to find jobs and transportation to those places of employment in certain neighborhoods. We have the budget coming up to discuss. We have the ARPA money. You know, we have a lot of this stuff, and it's continuously, or it seems as though as the structure kind of moves over to a more political leaning, they're using things like, poll motions or placing things in a way that it's more about politics than it is about the actual issues that are impacting everyday Nebraskans. For those of us in the progressive leaning side, we definitely have major concerns about where our unicameral stands anyway. Just coming up with new elections, we need to make sure that we hold on to that 17 so that we can filibuster. Things could look pretty scary for us, especially if that structure and the integrity of the unicameral starts to fall. So we definitely always want to support that nonpartisan kind of, independent structure of our unicameral and that system. So, all righty. Anything else, anyone?
I just want to remind everyone that we have a candidate interview next Tuesday with the one and only Cindy Maxwell Ostick, Legislature District 4.
Which district?
You may know her. You may have heard of her.
Yes, super excited.
I'm very excited. I really am, because I think that this election is so important, not just for my district, not just regarding the people, my neighbors, but across the state. There's really some interesting choices that our voters will have, to choose from. And one of the things that's really come to light lately is that some people don't realize that they've been redistricted. They don't understand their new boundary lines. And so maybe we could take a moment to just really request that people go and they check their voter registration, that it is current. If you have your vote by mail ballot request already sent in, great. If not, get it sent in, and double check where your boundary lines are and who you're going to be choosing among for your next elected representatives, not just legislature. They're all, they've all been redistricted. So lots of people don't understand which districts they're in now.
Yep. And I would scroll our little check your district thing, but I had to delete all of those to try to get StreamYard from going crazy on her. So yes. Thank you, Cindy. All right. Thank you so much, Nathan. Thanks, Brooklyn, Cindy. Everybody have a good night. And we'll see everybody next Tuesday, 8:00 for our candidate interview with Cindy Maxwell Ostick. Good night.
Bye.